Hi there, I'm here with Simon, and Simon, I was hoping, I want to get started now on an army. I have a vague idea about how MEG works. I like the system, I've seen all its unique aspects, but how do I go about choosing an army that really works for me? Maybe you can take us through some of the flavours that you get in here and what types of things I need to look for when choosing.
Okay, I suppose my first question to you, I'm going to question back to you, is what's your favourite army of history?
Okay, look, I'm partial to Rome,
Okay.
because I grew up with Asterix and Obelix, that's just the
There
way
you
it
go.
is.
Yeah.
But I suppose my real love is probably more medieval, but let's see what history has to offer over here.
So, I suppose it's an important first question really, because we've got all the characteristics in the game, and because we've got a very finely tuned point system, almost any army can work well in MEG. That's the first thing. There are no killer armies. We have 650 army lists. Actually, it's a monster task that the team have done, all free online.
And all types of them win games.
I could play with at least 600 of them and feel fine.
Okay.
So first thing is, if it's about having an army you can play well and win with, any army you like in history will be that.
Okay.
If you learn how to use it right. And that's the first really important priority. The second thing then as a beginner is what size of game are you going to play? Probably going to start with a Pacto game. Okay. So the easiest way to get into the game with the Pacto armies is we have ready-made box sets with Plastic Soldier Company, using the new ultracast plastic, which they've now mastered and come out really beautifully. Any of those box sets will give you a Pacto army and get you going. So you just buy that, get some bases, paint that up, you're ready to go. There's some decisions to make on what type of army you go for, and that slightly depends on A, your character, B, which periods of history you're interested in,
and what you like to paint.
And what you like to paint, yeah, exactly. So from that. So I've got a range of different armies, troop types out here of my boxes that give you a bit of a feel. So these three are actually part of the starter army set that's already out there. So let's start from what's easy and what's difficult to play, because that's actually a really good place to start. If you're a beginner, you don't want something that's too difficult to play, and you've two extreme versions of that really. One is go for something like the Gauls or the Goths. Okay. There are a lot of tribal troops, so they don't manoeuvre very well, but you get lots of them, so it's quite a strong army. And in the Maximus game, you'll get tugs of 9 bases, big chunky ones, maximum size ones. Okay, you'll have loads of troops, but the infantry basically need to be laid out well and mainly go directly into the enemy. Yeah, there's not a lot of and you'll still have a fun game out of that using the cavalry as the fun bits on the side. So you can start very simply. And it's very resilient, so it's a very safe bet to go for.
A very colourful and interesting army as well.
It is indeed. The other side to go is instead go the other way and go for the Romans, which you like, and they have the advantage as a beginner that they're all drilled, so they're more able to get you out of trouble. Okay. So if you've got your deployment wrong, you can redeploy Romans.
You can turn and wheel.
And also you're not going to be able to redeploy the Gauls. Okay. So I think there's two different philosophies to me of getting started. Is pick one of those two and stick with that army and get a little bit used to it. So I would go Goths, Gauls, Romans. There's two different Roman box sets. There's the early Imperial Rome, which are these, and there's the late Imperial Rome, which is very different in style, but you'll feel the same sort of control. And you've got the Gauls and the Goths. Okay. However, if you like something that's particularly beautiful to play, go for the Sassanids. In the middle.
Got those elephants.
Okay, so you get these lovely elephants, and it's a cavalry army, but it isn't a flexible cavalry army. So that's also relatively easy to play. All the cavalry are formed, and you get the fun of the elephants, which so any of those can work for different reasons. I would say the Sassanids are a little harder to play as a beginner than either the Romans or the Gauls, but it won't take you long to get used to those either. Okay. So if you fancy doing that kind of army, then that works perfectly well. You then come on to things that are going to be more difficult to use. So if you have an army from the biblical era, if you're particularly interested in the biblical era, the Egyptian army is a really great army. but it takes more skill to get good at using it. Because you have to learn how to use these chariots as some of the world's best skirmishers from that era. You know.
Okay.
And your foot troops are nowhere near as resilient as these or as punchy as these.
Okay.
So, you know, that's a little harder to
Got to
use.
be a bit careful over there with.
You do,
yeah.
you do. Pike Army, that's not a bad place to start because it's got fantastic frontal punch, and it's got pike blocks are quite strong in the game Impact here, but 3D more bases tend to be quite narrow, so you have to learn to protect your flanks well. And most of the great pike armies that won the famous victories, like Alexander and Philip, they didn't win them just because of the pikes. They won them because they had to coordinate with pikes, with the companions, with it. So they're a coordination army, really.
Okay.
So you have to get used to how to work those together.
That is quite scary to charge the front of a pike block.
You don't want to charge the front of a pike block with anything, really. There's not much that can take that head on. The very best Romans have a chance, but frontally, I mean, a pike block, understandably, is very difficult, but it's very vulnerable in its flanks. Very vulnerable in its flanks. If you like the medieval period, you can go all the way other side and go for something which is the very expensive chargey type army. So the Teutons are a great example of that.
Yes.
Lovely army when it's painted up. You probably won't have that many of them because they are very expensive, but boy are they dangerous. Okay, so that one you have to play in a very decisive way to break the enemy before the numbers start to take advantage of you. And one of the hardest types of armies to play is to go and play a big skirmisher type army and flexible cavalry army. So something like the Numidians, which I love as an army, which is flexible cavalry that can switch between javelin throwing skirmishers and grouped up and swarms of skirmishers. It's one of the most difficult types of armies to play.
Very difficult army to actually nail them down and be able to destroy them.
Also, it's not too easy. Although the pace at which the game goes, they tend to get squeezed off the table. So the trick with these armies, and it's true of all the shooty cavalry armies, is they're deliberately more difficult to play. And that's because if you look at past rule sets, past games I've played at times, shooty cavalry armies like Ottomans or something Hunnic, they are able to do you a lot of damage, but you can't catch them. So A makes for a bit of a dull game, and B, it means you can't actually get a result. So you sit opposite them playing them with a Gallic and go, well, I can't win, so there's nothing to try to do to win because I can't catch them. And they can, if I do that, they can beat me easily, and if I don't do that and sit in the corner, they can nibble away at me. So you end up with these Mexican standoffs. And the speed of the game is such in Meg that to actually play a shooty cavalry army well, you have to know how to do damage with it and win, because actually during the course of the game they will drive you off the table. And that's very, very deliberate. So they are a difficult army to play, actually. You probably feel they're difficult to catch because they're fast moving, but you've got to think about the depth of the board and how fast you move as well.
And now say I want to start with Romans, but I wouldn't mind trying out a few Gauls. At some point, could I play them together as allies, as foederati or something like that? How would you go about?
Well, they're mainly enemies in the early period,
Yes.
And then obviously later when you get into the foederati period, the same types of troops have been recruited into the Roman army as types of allies, but they were equipped with Roman equipment. So they're different figures, they'll look different. In fact, when you buy the late Roman box set, the troops that are in there could either be Romans, or they could be Italians and other types of Latins, or they could be from the outer rim of the empire, or they could be barbarians in inverted commas. Because there's some different variants of those sort of troops. And actually in the list you can see that you get foederati cavalry, which basically are sort of Gothic heavy cavalry in Roman equipment. They've been brought into the Roman army, but they're not drilled like the classic Roman cavalry from the early period.
Now these are all 15mm.
They are.
And you might have some players who they like 28mm, others like 10mm or 6mm.
Yeah, play whichever you like. And first of all, there's a 10% of my war games collection I think showing in the corner. So I play this game in 28, 25. My old minifigs before they became big enough. 15, 10, and 6. Okay. So all of those scales I use. It works perfectly well in all of them, and actually you can even play it with if your bigger figures are on different basing systems. Even there are ways of playing them with different basing systems that I've done a video about. So you can play using things that are based for other systems like Impetus, or play with individual figures from the old Warhammer Ancient Battle days. The mechanism, the system is very easy to adapt to any type of basing system.
And
so
I presume you just look and see what are the people around you playing and try and match the scale.
Yeah, and I think at 15mm is by far the most common for events. You know, people, it's historically been the big battle scale
Yeah.
for ancients, and we will be doing events with 15 and 28 mainly.
Okay.
Nobody has a problem playing 10 against 15 for that. I've been
As long as your basing is
as long as
the
your
same.
basing is the same, you know, we can put some 10mm figures against them, and for play purposes, people are happy with that. I have 10mm armies to play against each other. I really like Pack 2 in 6mm. It looks great. You know, we did Magnesia as a refight. It's on the web in 6mm. It looked fabulous in 6mm.
Use the same bases and have 3 times the figures.
Exactly. Yeah. No, they pack blocks look like pack blocks because instead of being 8 figures deep, there, I think mine are 16 figures deep. So they're like, you know, that's like one base.
Okay.
So they do look good.
A little different to paint.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the thing.
It is.
Okay. Thank you, Simon.
A pleasure.